and we awarded this person another 3 times 40,000. That told me this is we're back on track again. For awarding. Unfortunately, there's not enough money in that accelerator pot. So that's a separate issue.
This year we don't have a group discovery grant. So in case of the renewal, so I'm writing, so how I can appreciate the contribution of my co-PI in my renewal? Because he will not be very happy if I don't put his name, since he has contributed significantly in 5 years grant, which I'm applying for the renewal. Is there any possibility I can add his name or I can appreciate his contribution?
I don't have experience with
Not anymore?
Well, team grants are up.
They
No,
don't have any group grant.
there's no team grants are no longer allowed. That's what you're referring to, a team
Yes.
grant? Yeah.
Okay, okay.
So you're going solo.
Yeah.
You're going solo. Doesn't mean you cannot make the case and story in the free form part of the contribution of this person, but the story you're telling and the projection of what you want to do has to be yours. Has to be yours. Yeah. No more. Team grants are no longer allowed. There were so few of them coming in and such a low success rate, and NSERC decided to strike it. We agreed. There was absolutely no discussion around the table. End of story. That was at last year's COGS meeting, and so it showed up this year. Team grants.
I was wondering if you can comment on the role of the external reviewers and their the influence of that review on the college discussions.
Yeah, sure, I guess so. The ultimate score is allocated by the 5 panel members. We read the external reviews, and every individual handles this, I guess, differently. When I look at the proposals that I'm responsible for, I first form my own opinion. Then I look at the external reviews, and then try to see if I adjust up or down my judgment. If I see an external review from who I know is an expert in the field, and that person comes out very, very strongly supportive, well, then that will push me up in my judgment into the next category, something like that. On the other hand, if I again know that person's expert and say, well, that's kind of so, then I'll get some more doubts and things like that. So I use it as a calibration and as an adjustment of my own judgment. And one of the problems is that often there are not that many reviews we get back, actually. So maybe you've noticed that sometimes there's little response that you get, and NSERC knows that's a problem, and they promise to work on it. Basically, following up, the staff has to follow up with the referees and get more of the feedback. But so that's kind of how.
I would just add to that we were encouraged in our training sessions that to develop our independent thinking about the application, independent of the external reviewers, and definitely in the discussion we have to bring up the external reviewer opinion, but it's okay either to agree or disagree with the external reviews. We were strongly encouraged to form our independent opinion on the application. And sometimes indeed, as my colleague said, we don't have enough external reviews. Maybe there is one, let's say, or even none, I think.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, last year, my committee, we had 33% of the applications didn't have any reviews at all, external reviews. And that number is increasing, and the biggest, we called people. I had my staff that work with me call people, wherever they were, and say, why didn't you submit? They said, well, first of all, we haven't got time around Christmas to review these. Secondly, a CCV is a joke, and we don't want to read something so long. And that's, NSERC has heard that more often than not, and so forth. But there's a problem that's more fundamental. This goes back a long way. Applicants tend to think that when they get their report back from NSERC, and of course the reviews are attached, as long as it's committee feedback, they think that everything was based on those reviews that they got from the external examiner, whereas in fact it's only one part of the whole mechanism. And a good example of that is when you don't have any reviews, you're relying on the committee members that are making this decision for fun, because you don't have anybody from outside. And even then that doesn't guarantee. We had a couple of cases last year where the external examiners were so far into support with the committee members who knew the subject, they said, these are garbage, just throw them away, don't even discount them. At the same time, there were 6 or 7 applications out of 265 that we reviewed, where we had to put a hold on the grant application being reviewed because nobody, and I mean nobody within the committee, and even bringing outside people, knew what the subject was really about experts. So we got back within 2 weeks, we had to get outside reviews specifically for these because nothing came in. These people, the committee members were comfortable. And so that's the extreme that I see. And that's a good extreme because it shows how conscientious people are at NSERC and saying, look, we want to give these people a fair shake just because the externals didn't come in, you know. But even the committee members said, none of the 5 of us are really in this area, you know. We got signed this grant application to look at it. We were relying on external reviews. They didn't come in. Now what do we do? You know, so we had no choice but to postpone those 7 reviews or 6, whatever it was, and go outside again.
So what is NSERC doing about this? Because it's great to say we're going to find more external reviewers, but this, I don't know, Tim and I are hearing this from everybody that there's, you'd be lucky if you get an external review.
So we usually have externals, but one of the life science panels went up to requesting, we typically requested 5, and one of the panels went up to requesting 7, and they saw a noted increase. And so now we're thinking about going up to 7. The problem is, once all the reviewers know that we've gone up to 7, that effect is going to disappear. We're not, you know, we're only going to see the bonus while nobody knows that we've asked for more.
So 9 and
So
11.
it's, yeah,
Where do you stop
exactly.
it? That's right.
Yeah.
So it's not clear what the long-term solution is. I think it's across the board that we won't ask the same reviewer for more than 3 externals. Does every other panel do that? We won't ask someone for more than 3 externals. So that's one reason to submit your requests. That's our issue. And I think that workload management issue on the other side is important. But what it says is that when you're not an applicant, do your reviews, please. It really helps the whole process. Yeah.
So very good advice.
And this is across the board, all the evaluation groups. This is a common problem.
Yes.
And NSERC is aware of how bad it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, discussion at COGS in the springtime, when I was there saying we're going to take the external reviews off the table. That's a proposal.
Yes,
We're going
yes.
to deal with that this November. We may not have external reviews in next year's competition.
Yeah.
That's how serious this is.
Yeah.
Well, how do
Because
you
it's
guys
unfair.
feel about that? I mean, this is we have a communication line to answer.
I still know, and I said, they don't have reviews, they just don't have the review.
They don't have external reviews.
Sorry, you didn't hear that?
Very small grants.
We have a reviewers to
Okay. But that's all news to me.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask a follow-up to that. Do you find you get a better response if you are suggesting external reviewers in the Canadian system, or does it seem to be irrespective of whether you're asking international reviewers? What would be the strategy if you want to try and get an external review? Should you pick someone who you know that will do it, but maybe isn't the best?
I think it's good to have Canadian reviewers who are familiar with the system and what NSERC wants. Sometimes an international reviewer, let's say from Europe or so on, might consider that the program is not ambitious enough, for instance, but they don't know the limits of the, let's say, the funding of the NSERC Discovery Grant. So why did you ask only for 2 PhD students, 1 master, 1 PDF, and I don't know, 5 undergrads, when you could have asked for 5 and so on. So you are not ambitious enough. So it's good to have people who are familiar with the NSERC system and Canadians. And if they are at arm's length, if you can suggest names that you know from your field, but you haven't collaborated very recently with that person, or there is no any interference, conflict of interest, then definitely put forward those names.
Is there a target acceptance or rejection rate? And I ask this because in some sense it's a little more merciful sometimes to reject an application and give them a chance to reapply rather than award them with a very low value grant. So how do you balance that?
There is no target.
Yeah.
Everyone is evaluated against the grid. There can be a discussion of a lower period of funding. So it's always, for us at least, if someone was on the cusp, or if we thought, especially if the proposal missed the mark, then sometimes the best thing we can do is give a 1 year. And the message, if you get a 1-year grant, the message is, we think you're better than this. That's the message you should get if you get a 1-year grant. We want you to reapply because we don't want you stuck at what you earned on this proposal. So it's not a negative. It's actually an act of faith.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I've seen several cases where we had an applicant, there was an issue with the proposal, there was some questions raised, and it wasn't clear, and you can't obviously interact and have clarification. So the decision was made, okay, we're not going to award 5 years at a possibly low funding rate. We're going to ask this person to reapply and give this person 1 or 2 years of money, and to think about it and come back and prove that that the questions that were asked or raised could be addressed. So that can happen. But otherwise, there is no target really, and there's just at some point a cutoff on the funding dates. That's it.
You talked earlier about there's these 3 categories: research for the proposal and HQP. And look at sort of very early career, that HQP tends to be a little bit below those applications for obvious reasons. I'm in my second renewal. I'm just wondering, in your experience, what do people do well on, and what do people struggle with in this phase?
At the HQP.
Out of those 3, which one do they do best at? Where's that?
It's
Is there a trend?
At least in our evaluation group, I think HQP is always the biggest concern for the renewal. So probably it's a good strategy. If you think your student number is low, maybe you should try to have some co-supervisor or something, and also elaborate clearly who are your students and where are they and how wonderful job they have done.
So HQP is
Yeah.
wonderful.
Well, we had the opposite experience in my committee. Last 2 years, the merit of the proposal was the thing that really people were going after, first and second renewals, as opposed to, and is the person up to date with what's happening in their field? That is so important. I can't tell you how important that is. These people, are they just regurgitating what they've published in a few cohorts, or are they really on top of their game, done their homework? And HQP training, we usually see comes along very nicely, and so forth. But the reputation kind of is building already. We see that, otherwise you wouldn't be at the second renewal stage. But the proposal is a well-written, and that was a good point made earlier, I think, by yourself, was that it has to be a balance between overpowering somebody technically and generic, because you've got to have a really fine line. It's a real art, I'm telling you, doing a proper proposal writing for the pages you have, because you have 5 people, and you have others who are going to be readers as well of this thing. Not everybody's going to be a specialist in your particular field. At the other hand, you can't write it so general that it's just like reading a novel. There's a real fine art in terms of putting a proposal together. I've been in the business for 4 decades, and I still don't get it right sometimes. And I don't mind admitting it. I get carried away, and say, everybody knows this, but they don't know. That's why it's really important, I think, is to give your application draft to somebody outside and have them look at it and be critical, constructively critical about it, and learn from that exercise, take advantage of that. So we have sort of the opposite for these students.
It's also discipline dependent, because for ECE, some professors tend to have huge number of HQPs. I think it's kind of like
I would just add to the very good points made about the merit of the proposal when it goes to first or second renewal, is sometimes, even though the applicant describes the relationship to other support, but somehow it's not convincing enough, and it seems that for pretty much similar type of research there is support from elsewhere, because already you raised industry support and so on. And then at the merit of the proposal, there is not enough novelty or difference compared to what you already have. Let's say you have a CRT with a company or other things, and kind of fits into the same thing. So that can lower the originality of the merit of the proposal.
Yeah, that's a good point.